Hi, everybody. My name is John Palumbo. I want to thank you for tuning into this Freedom Devotional. And we're going to talk about today judging others. One of the reasons that I hear most why people turn away from God and Christianity and the church itself is because that they feel that the church is filled with hypocrites because they tried to go to church and instead of being welcomed, they felt judged, they felt persecuted, they felt condemned, they felt that basically everybody was looking down on them. Okay? Meanwhile, we need to remember that nobody is perfect. And the sad truth is, okay, that we all encounter situations like this from churches, or if we haven't encountered it, maybe we've been guilty of having an overly pious, judgmental attitude. Oh, you shouldn't be doing this and you need to be doing that towards someone else. And we fail to ignore the speck in our own, the log in our own eye while looking at the speck in someone else's. I once heard someone tell me that there's more of the world in the church than there are churches in the world. What that means is there's more people doing worldly, sinful things in the church than the sinners out there. They feel safer because when they're with the sinners, supposedly, at least they know what to expect. Where here they think they're going to expect something good and they get condemned. But now we need to look at it like this, okay? We're all imperfect beings serving a perfect God. And none of us is perfect. Okay? Yet I hear it too when I do something that I shouldn't be doing, supposedly. You're supposed to be a Christian. You go to church. How could you do that? And the fact is, being a Christian and going to church does not suddenly make a person superhuman or infallible or incapable of making mistakes. Okay? It doesn't work that way. That's as silly as me saying, let's say you go to the doctor every 6 months for blood work, and your blood work is good. You check your cholesterol, you check your blood pressure, you check your sugar, your A1C3, you check all these things like clockwork. You're always going to the doctor when you're always conscious of your health. And now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, because you're a human being, you get sick or you catch a disease. Can I go to you now and say, how did you get that disease? You always go to a doctor. Don't you listen to what your doctor tells you? Are you a hypocrite because you didn't practice what your doctor told you? Keep away from salt, keep away from this, keep away from that. That's ridiculous. We're all sick human beings, and sin is basically spiritual sickness. Okay, we're all spiritually sick. All right, and Jesus is the great physician. But that doesn't mean because we follow him and he's our doctor, our spiritual doctor, that we're never going to get spiritually sick again. Just like we're not going to get normally sick when we go to a regular doctor. You know, the Pharisees, who were basically judgmental, and they were the ones looking down on everyone, saying, we're so pious and we're so this and we're so that. Jesus confronted them and he spoke to them about that. And it says in Mark chapter 2, verse 16 to 18, and the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, those who are well have no need for a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. So Jesus said, I eat with tax collectors who are basically extortionists. They collected more tax than they were supposed to, more money than they were supposed to. They were basically shaking down their own Jewish people for Rome, okay, and pocketing the difference. All right. Um, we need to remember when we look down on someone, or when someone looks down on us and we're taking it out on Jesus and we're walking away from the whole Christianity, we're walking away from Jesus, we're holding Jesus accountable for something that he did not do. Okay? Because the people that follow him are sick. The Pharisees were sick. We're all sick, spiritually sick individuals. If we weren't, Jesus would never have had to go to the cross But when we allow situations to lure us away from Christianity and the church, we're taking it out on Jesus. And we're not rejecting his people, we're rejecting him. Meanwhile, Jesus came to call the sick, and he held the Pharisees accountable, and he called them out on their hypocrisy. And those that are calling us down, calling us out, and looking down on us and trying to judge us, they're going to be called out also on their day of judgment. But we need to remember, salvation is not by works. You know, when Jesus walked the earth, he put himself around the lowest of the low. He spoke with the tax collectors. He spoke with um, adulteresses. He spoke with the prostitutes, the lowliest people around. Jesus put himself around, okay? And it says in a story in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, verse 36, where Jesus actually confronts a Pharisee on his judgmental attitude, and he puts him in check. And it says in Luke chapter 7, verse 36, one of the Pharisees asked him, meaning Jesus, to eat with him. So Jesus is now eating with this Pharisee. And he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at his table. And behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster flask ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this, he said to himself, if this man was a prophet, okay, he would know who and what sort of woman this is that's touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answered him and said, Simon, that's the name of the Pharisee, I have something to tell you. And Simon answered, say it, teacher. Tell me, Rabbi. And Jesus gave him a parable. And he said, a certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed him, I'm going to put it, it says 500 denarii, but I'm going to try to put it in, monetary terms, American monetary terms, so we can really understand it. One owed him 500 pennies. He owed him $5, okay? And the other 50, okay? When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both of them. Now, which of them would love him more? The one that got the $5 canceled, or the one that got the $50 debt canceled? So Simon answered, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. I suppose the guy with the $50 debt, loan that was forgiven would love him more, would be more grateful. Stands to reason, right? So Jesus said to him, you have judged correctly. Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house, and you gave me no water for my feet. Remember, they wore open-toed sandals. Their feet were always dirty, okay? But you didn't give me no water for my feet. But she wet my feet with her tears, and she wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss. You didn't greet me. But from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has not stopped anointing my feet. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little. That what he's trying to say is, if you're forgiven much, those who are forgiven much love much. So the people that are really spiritually sick, the lowest of the low, when God forgives them, they're so grateful, okay, that they just try to serve God wholeheartedly. But, unfortunately, there's always going to be people in the church that have the Pharisee mindset, okay? They're always going to have a judgmental heart to try to make themselves look more pious than others. Don't be offended by them. Pray for them, because they are spiritually sick. They're not only spiritually sick, they're spiritually blind, because they can't see that they have a log in their own eyes, as Jesus put it in the Gospel of Matthew, and they're focusing on the speck in your eye, okay? The Apostle Paul tells us in his letter to Rome, in Romans 2:1, you therefore have no excuse who pass judgment on someone else. So when someone judges you and they're trying to call you out on something, they're saying, I know what you should be doing and you're not doing it. So that means they have no excuse if they do it themselves. Because for whatever point you judge another, you're condemning yourself, the Apostle Paul said, because you who pass judgment do the same things. God is aware of these things. God knows what goes on with his children, but he loves us all despite of our spiritual sickness because we're all sinners saved by grace, and we need to remember that. In verse 21 of chapter 2 in Romans, Paul goes on to say, then you who teach others, do you not teach yourself? You who preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say people should not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who hate idols, do you rob temples of their idols? You who boast in the law, do you not dishonor God by breaking the law? Saying I fast every day and I keep the holy days and I keep the Sabbath, but do you not break these laws that you're boasting about? He's basically saying, as it is written, God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. And it happens today when people pass judgment and they condemn people and they try to have this Pharisee mindset. It causes God's name to be blasphemed. But the thing is, I want to encourage you as I close now. Don't let the insanity of anyone else prevent you from serving Jesus and allowing God to bless you. Okay, because God's got a plan and a purpose for you. And you know what? We all have our own spiritual sicknesses. We're human beings, just like we're all going to get worldly sicknesses, whether it be cancer, diabetes, whatever. There's going to be a disease or an ailment out there that's going to attack all of us. Otherwise, nobody would die. We're sinful beings. We're human beings. And as human beings, we're products of sin. When we sin, we do what we do best. But don't allow that to take you away from God, because God will deal with those people and he will deal with them by the way they judge. So pray for them. Pray that God will open up their eyes so that they can repent. The same way this woman repented for her many sins. Okay? None of us are perfect, but the key is to strive to make a perfect effort to be Christ-like. And if we strive to make a perfect effort, even if we fall short here and there, God's faithful to forgive us. Let us also be faithful to forgive one another, because none of us are perfect. Thank you for tuning in.